Okay, we're going to look at Jeremiah 30 here, and this is regarding the reason for the shields project. Interestingly enough, had the idea to do these shields and already started producing them before I even saw this, which just makes it kind of interesting. But let's go back to Jeremiah 30 briefly. The real message, the passage to talk about is in Jeremiah 31. So here, Jeremiah 30, verse 2, Yahweh speaking to Jeremiah says, behold, the days are coming, and then he says, Nam Yahweh, and that's like signed, stamped with his signet ring. Nam Yahweh means, I have made this an executive order. It will happen, no question, no way anything can derail this. When I will return the captivity, that's a phrase meaning he will let us go out from being captives, of my people Israel and Judah. So there's this concept of this two-house movement, two-house concept, because he makes a distinction. Israel and Judah, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom was called either Israel or Ephraim. The southern kingdom was called Yehudah. Said Yahweh, and I will return them to the land that I gave their forefathers, and they will possess it. Okay, this is Jeremiah 30, and from my regard, this hasn't happened yet. Yes, they came back after they were taken into captivity from Babylon. Yehudah did, but never the northern kingdom. And even in the days of the Romans, they were occupying the land, but not the northern kingdom. When Yeshua said, I have not come except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, you might say, oh, well, that means he came for the Jews. No, the Jews are the southern kingdom of Yehudah. Yeah. The lost sheep of the house of Israel is the lost 10 tribes. So he came to call them back, but they said, no thanks. And so collectively, as history plays out, the lost 10 tribes have stayed lost. They were referred to as the Galut, Gimel Lamed Vav Tav. The Gimel is the English equivalent of the letter C, the third letter. So it's the C, the Kalut, the Kalut. That's where we get the word Celt. So I think that the people who are the Celts, including the Vikings with the Celtic knots as their adornment, and the people that lived in Gaul, France, and the people that lived in Ireland, Scotland, England, they became pagan and heathen, meaning that they turned away from the Torah of Yahuwah and they lost memory that they were ever Israel. That's the people of the Celts. Those are the ones that he's going to return back to the land, but it's conditional. So you go on and you read through Jeremiah 30, and he says, verse 10, but as for you, do not fear. That's the word altira, which is the most often repeated commandment. Do not fear my servant Jacob. There's that word that we talked about in the other video, which is Obed, worshiper, servant. The word of Yahweh, Nam Yahweh, and do not be afraid, says it again, Israel, for behold, I am saving you from distant places. Here we are in Canada. I come from Oregon. Distant places, halfway around the world from Israel. I'm saving you from there. And your descendants, well, that's us compared to these people, from the land of their captivity. That's USA and Canada, the land of our captivity. And Jacob will return and be at peace and tranquil, not harassed by Hamas and Hezbollah. Something's going to happen where those guys dare not harass his people, and none will make afraid, for I am with you to save you, Nam Yahweh, for I will bring annihilation upon all the nations among whom I have dispersed you. Yahweh dispersed his people into America, the North American and South American continents, and according to Jeremiah 30, those two continents will be destroyed, annihilated, because they have taken advantage and oppressed the people of Israel. But upon you, that's Israel, I will not bring annihilation. I will chastise you with justice. And that word justice is mishvat, balancing of scales. According to the evil that we have done, we will be chastised in order to balance the scales. But other than that, Yahweh has nothing against us. What he has against us is that we betrayed the covenant by doing evil to each other and turned our back on him. I will never annihilate and eliminate you completely. That's what he says. For thus says Yahweh, your injury is grave, your wound is acute. Going on, I struck you the blow of an enemy. Yahweh has struck his people as an enemy with cruel reproof because of your many sins, your transgressions that were so numerous. He's just balancing the scales. I have inflicted these upon you. Verse 15. It's not the devil, it's not our enemies. Yahweh himself has inflicted these. Verse 16, nevertheless, all who took advantage of the occasion and have devoured you shall themselves be devoured. All who oppressed you will all themselves go into captivity. All who trampled you will be trampled, and all who despoiled you I shall deliver to become the spoils. This is the picture. Yahweh gave Israel the truth and says, do emet and chesed and tzedakah. Truth, kindness, and righteousness, because it's all a matter of balanced scales, mishpat. Israel, having received the truth and having been told to do goodness, truth, and kindness, does the opposite. Israel is wicked and oppressive and big stupid jerks. So Yahweh brings just balanced scales upon them, and they're crushed by their enemies. But when Israel turns back to Yahweh's Torah and does truth, kindness, and righteousness, Yahweh will then rebalance the scales, and all who took advantage of the occasion by spoiling Israel and taking all the stuff, the loot that Yahweh had given to Israel, they themselves will be spoiled and looted. Yahweh goes on to say, I am returning the captivity of the tents of Jacob. I will have mercy on his abodes. That's verse 18 of chapter 30. You will be a people to me, and I will be Elohim to you. Yahweh's not just making this grand statement as if he's giving a speech. I will be your God. This is the cry of his heart. He has been waiting for thousands of years for Israel to return to him because he wants to be the role of Elohim. He wants to be our champion, our defender. He wants to pour out his blessing on his chosen people, which is Israel, and there will be no other than Israel. If you want to be his people, you are Israel. But because Israel, his people, has turned away and says, no, we're going to look after the gods of the Assyrians and the Egyptians and the Mayans, he doesn't have a people. There's other verses where Yahweh says, Israel is my heritage, my only offspring. We're going to read about that in just a moment here. If we go to chapter 31 then, it says, verse 2, I have loved you with an eternal love, that's unending. Therefore I have extended kindness to you. I shall yet rebuild you. You shall be rebuilt, O maiden of Israel. You will yet adorn yourself with drums and go forth in the dance of the merrymakers, planting vineyards in the mountains of Samaria. On and on. We'll run down here. With weeping they will come, through supplications I will bring them. He's going to pull his people back to himself. I will guide them on streams of water, a direct path. That's a Yashar Derek, in which they will not stumble. His Torah, his instructions are not things that we can't do, that we're going to trip and fall. For I have been a father to Israel, and here's the key thing here, Ephraim is my firstborn. For Ephraim to go astray, it's like a man having a firstborn son whom he loved, who he has poured all his attention to, and then the son betrays his father's trust, betrays his father's heart, and does everything counter, everything opposite, and runs away and leaves his father standing there with nothing. It's like, what happened? What more could I have done? You know that story. This is Yahweh's heart. Ephraim is my firstborn, he says. Now we're in chapter 31. Hear the word of Yahweh, O nations, relate it in the distant lands, and say, the one who scattered Israel, that's Yahweh, not the devil. He shall gather him in and guard him as a shepherd guards his flock. For Yahweh will redeem Jacob and deliver him from the hand of one mightier than he. And they will come singing rejoiciously, Sameach, On the heights of Zion, stream in. Okay, let's run down a little further. Verse 17. Now this is the prodigal son story. You hear about it in the Gospels, and here's where Yeshua got it from. I have heard Ephraim moaning. Yahweh heard Ephraim moaning. Why is who's Ephraim? The northern kingdom of Israel. Like the prodigal son sitting in the pig pen, wishing he could eat the food of the pigs because he was starving and had squandered his inheritance. Ephraim says this. This is the lost 10 tribes. You, speaking to Yahweh, you have chastised me and I have become chastened. Meaning, look it, I went stupid and you let me feel the effects of my stupidity and I realize it. I have come to my senses. Like an untrained calf I was. Bring me back to you and I shall return, for you are Yahweh Elohi, Yahweh my Elohim. For after my returning, or that's also the word for rebellion, it's the word for Shabbat. He said, after I rebelled and I turned away, I took regard of what did I do? What kind of a darn fool have I been? And so he returned, he repented, and he's coming back. See, Yahweh says, when you have turned away from me, I turned away from you and I called your enemies in upon you. But soon as Ephraim goes, what the heck? After my returning, I regretted, and after my being made aware, I slapped my thigh in anguish. Dadgummit! That's Ephraim. According to the American West, anyway. Yes. I was ashamed, and I also humiliated, for I bore the disgrace of my youth. And then suddenly Yahweh's attitude changes. He says, is Ephraim my favorite son, or a delightful child, that whenever I speak of him, I remember him more and more? Wait a minute. Minutes ago, Yahweh was saying, that kid, and calling in the worst enemies the world has ever seen upon him to ravage him and tear apart and ruin him and beat him and drag him in chains. And now Yahweh is saying, gosh, is Ephraim such a delightful child that whenever I think of him, my heart grows fonder and fonder? Therefore, Yahweh speaking, my inner self yearns for him, for Ephraim. I will surely take pity on him. I will surely change my heart and pour out. And that word taking pity, as we mentioned in the other shield, is to spare him and take responsibility for and care for him. And anybody that would come near him, wham! Yahweh's going to punch those guys out. I mean, this is exact opposite of Yahweh's attitude. And what was the turning point? Ephraim coming to his senses, scattered around the world, out where he's been dispersed, and simply saying, hey, let's turn back to Abba's table. Mm-hmm. Why am I wanting to eat the food of pigs? He wasn't allowed to eat it because the pigs were somebody else's property, and he is supposed to feed the pigs so they get nice and big and fat. For his every pound, every ounce was money to the owner. And he said, oh man, I wish I could eat the food of those pigs. An interesting thing, in Hebrew, the word pig literally means one who returns. So when Ephraim was saying, I wish I could eat the food of one who returns, I wish I could eat the food of a pig, I wish I could eat the food of one who returns. And he goes, hey, why don't I eat the food of one who returns? Why don't I go home to my father's house? That's the catch in Hebrew, but you don't see it in other languages. Because the word pig isn't the one who returns in English or any other language, just Hebrew. So, you go down here, and Yahweh says, therefore my inner self yearns for him, I will surely take pity. Nam Yahweh. Again, that stamp, like this is executive order. Then he says this, verse 20 of Jeremiah 31. Make road markers for yourself. Who? Ephraim, make road markers for yourself. Verse 20 of Jeremiah 31. Set up landmarks for yourself. Landmarks and road markers, if you look at the meaning of this, it's like billboards or markers along the highway. Landmarks for yourself, set the thoughts of your heart upon the road, the route you are walking. Okay, here's the thing. The thing about these shields is that they're drawn like this spiraling path. The word derek, actually Yashar derek, is a straight path. But one reason for doing these in a circle is so that if you're sitting there, you don't have to read all the words upside down, like if it was square and just written like that. But you know, this is to be, here's the thing. These are like stepping stones. The word Zanah, which is billboard, is where you get the word Zion, which is put these on prominent display. If you're driving down the road and you have mile markers, or they advertise, okay, food and gas ahead, or lodging ahead, and all along the road you have these things saying, or you have all along saying, okay, turn right is this next highway, turn left is straight ahead 5 miles is, he's telling us, make signs that we can understand. It's kind of like the reverse of Hansel and Gretel. They left breadcrumbs, and then they went to the Candyland house in the middle of the woods, you know, the witch's cottage. But birds ate all the breadcrumbs. They couldn't find their way back. Yahweh is saying, listen, you guys, Ephraim, the gingerbread house, that's what it was. Not
I wondered
Candyland
what
house.
verse that's in.
Oh. An interesting thing. There's a fellow, total off track here, there's a fellow by the name of Aesop. Aesop's Fables?
Yeah.
The word Aesop in Hebrew means collection. So Aesop's Fables is Hebrew for a collection of these stories by which you can see morals in them. Aesop is a Hebrew word. Whether or not it was the man's name, and he did what his name meant, I'm not sure. But anyway, just so you know about that. The point is, Yahweh isn't saying, go find the trail of breadcrumbs you left. No, those have been eaten up long ago. He says, you are out here in the middle of the thick woods, lost, out in the wilderness, and you don't know your way back. That's not true. We do know our way back, and the words of this Torah are the way back. So he says, make signposts, billboards, highway markers for yourself like stepping stones. So having these shields like stepping stones, I can envision having them poured out of bronze or iron, like you might have in your garden, like stepping stones, or made out of poured concrete or some kind of a resin thing, to where these shields, this is the path back. These are the words from Yahweh's Torah that says, set your heart and mind on my instructions. While you were out here in the wilderness, the path back home to Abba's table. We're doing that. That's what this is. We're sitting here at Sukkot because this is the path back to Abba's bet, his house, his teachings and instruction, because if we do this, we'll get the covenant back. Thus says Yahweh Zavot, people will again say this thing in the land of Yehuda and its cities when I return the captivity. May Yahweh bless you, O abode of righteousness, O Kadosh mountain. Yehuda will dwell in it and its cities together, plowmen and those who travel with the herd, for I have quenched the thirsty soul and have replenished every distraught soul. My point is this. Yahweh promises to bring his people back together. Verse 26, behold, the days are coming, Nam Yahweh, again, this will happen, no question, when I shall sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda. The seed of man and the seed of animal, he goes on to say, just, verse 27, as I was diligent concerning them to uproot, to smash, to destroy, to annihilate, and bring evil. Yahweh himself is saying that he is the Satan, the adversary, the enemy. Yahweh did these things to his own people. I was diligent concerning Israel and Yehuda to uproot, smash, destroy, annihilate, and bring evil. Whew. So I will be diligent concerning them to build and plant. Nam Yahweh.
Nam Yahweh.
This is where my hope is fixed. What Yahweh did to Israel is behind us, and if we look at history, we have 3,000 years since the days of David, when his favor was upon Israel and Yehuda collected together. He said, and for those who don't like the two-house concept, too bad. Yahweh talks about the two-house concept, the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah. And he says he will build us and he will plant. Now you don't build without expecting to live for a time, a duration. And you don't plant except you expect that the plants will grow and you will eat and you will re-sow and replant. It's for a time. This is not the end of the world.
Amen.
We have years in front of us, maybe even 1,000 years. Get your head different. This is not the end of the world for Israel. This is the beginning of Yahuwah's favor upon us. If we do Aksameach, his Torah, in righteousness. Thank you, Yahweh, for your words of truth.
Hallelujah.